This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a welcome to the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Levar Stoney. Levar, we're delighted to have you on. We've had some of your cabinet colleagues, but first time we've had an opportunity to sit and have a conversation with you. We very much appreciate your being on. I'll tell our viewers, what I'll also tell you, that as the governor was making his cabinet selections, some of them kept us guessing right up to the time when they were introduced. But on the other hand, as we thought about who would be Secretary of the Commonwealth, if you were polling friends of mine and others around Capitol Square, they said, well, that's got to be Levar Stoney. That's going to be Levar for your working as executive director of the Democratic Party. You're working with Terry McAuliffe prior to his run and during the run, so kind of a natural to come into that cabinet position. And so delighted to have you here to help explain to our viewers some about what does the Secretary of the Commonwealth do. And before we were starting taping, you were telling me about quite a busy weekend you had. So I don't know if you want to start with the weekend and then talk about all the other responsibilities.
Sure. Well, I had a busy weekend. I feel like sometimes the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, we get to do everything that maybe sometimes other folks may not want to do. But I enjoyed it. I think I have the energy for it. And I just love getting out there and talking to people. So this weekend, I started in Petersburg and spoke to a group of ladies talking about what my job does in Petersburg, down in Petersburg. And then I was at an opening of a public library in Petersburg as well on Saturday. Not many libraries are being opened around Virginia any longer.
That's right.
So for a library to be opened in inner city Petersburg, really, really big deal. And then on Sunday, now this is the big enchilada right here, 7:45 in the morning, we begin our first church. Me and the governor go to 16 churches from 7:45 till 2 p.m. That is a long weekend right there. So 16 churches in Hampton Roads with Delegate Lionel Spruill.
Well, they must have been fairly close to each other. Were they on both sides of the James, or all of them on one side?
They were all in south side of Hampton Roads.
Yeah.
Many in Chesapeake, Norfolk, Portsmouth, basically. So we went back and forth. Believe it or not, for a while there, I thought we were not going to be able to get to 16, but we did. We made it 16. We made it happen. So the governor won the record. Supposedly, Delegate Spruill told the governor that Governor Kane at the time, or he was running for governor, so Tim Kaine at the time, running for governor, went to 14. The governor is a very, very competitive individual.
That's right.
He got to 16, and he spoke about his first 100 days in office.
Well, he had done that here in Richmond at the library, so he just rolled on into that for the weekend too. So
That's
that
exactly right.
Was a big time. When many people think about the Secretary of the Commonwealth who knows something about it, they think about all those appointments where the recommendations come through your office. We've got some website addresses we'll put up for our viewers if they haven't been on them. The first one we'll ask them to put up is one that tell us something about you,
Yep.
about your background,
Oh.
then they got links from there.
Good.
But tell the viewers something about this whole appointment process.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, the Secretary of Commonwealth's office has a varied amount of different responsibilities. I'll hit to the main responsibility, board appointments, here in a second, but just to educate folks on what else we do.
Yes.
We help the governor with the clemency and pardons process, which includes restoration of voting rights. We help the governor also with the notary publics, registering lobbyists, authenticating documents. We also accept the conflict of interest statements from around the Commonwealth, and we also deal with the service of process issues around the Commonwealth. So we play different roles, and recently I had another role added to my responsibility, and that is I'm the new liaison to the tribal nations, the Indian nations of Virginia. So it's a lot going on, but the most important thing that the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office does is ensure that 4,000 slots in the governor's tenure are filled. And so 4,000 individuals, the governor will appoint, nearly 4,000, he will appoint while he's governor of Virginia. And it's my job to assist in finding the brightest, most talented, and most qualified individuals throughout the Commonwealth, no matter party, Democrat or Republican, no matter their ethnicity, no matter their geographic location. I'm out to find them.
And hitting the ground running, starting off, you must have nearly 1,000 of those that come in the very first year.
That's exactly right. I have about 632 up in June 30th. And so July 1 is usually when the term starts. My team is tasked with finding 632 talented, bright individuals for each of those slots. And, you know, the boards range, David. They can be the Board of Visitors at University of Virginia, or we can have people who want to be on the sheep board, the cave board, or the funeral directors board. I mean, there's a lot of different boards for a particular expertise an individual may have, and we want folks to sign up.
And on one of the addresses, and we'll make sure maybe this one comes up now, it shows the link to that page.
Great.
Where there's an ability, if someone wants to nominate someone, suggest there's a form, or if someone wants to say that they have interest in serving on a particular board.
Yeah, I give hats off to the McDonnell administration for bringing a lot of this stuff online. They brought the nomination process online, along with also getting folks in the system who just want to apply for a board position. And commonwealth.virginia.gov is the website. A person can go in there. You think that Levar Stoney would be great for a particular board, you can go there and actually nominate me, and we will follow up with the nominee to see if they really are interested in actually serving on that board. With so many openings, we hope that this will make it easier for folks who have a working lifestyle to actually just go online and make it easy and sign up.
You know, something else that they'll find on that site, if they're looking at, I think across the top, the bar where you have clip things, they find the Blue Book.
The Blue Book.
Which years ago used to be a blue-bound book, and
That's
then
right.
someone made it maroon before they stopped doing it, I think.
I saw that.
Yeah, right. But what they will find, starting with the Kane administration and followed through with the McDonnell administration, is that it's online.
That's right.
That it's free. And so if someone has interest in one of those boards and they said, I wonder who's been serving on that, and if that
That's
would
exactly
be
right.
something, then they can go on there and
Take a look.
click on and
browse. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And we will do one. We do one for. We'll do one as well, and it is. Some people really want the blue bound book again, and I think we still make about a couple of those a year, but a lot of it's all online now. And people can go there and actually check out, what type of person has served on this board in the past, and does their expertise or skill match up with an individual who may have served there before. It's a really, really good resource.
Yeah, and you mentioned that one of the university boards, clearly over the years, as those of us who've watched have seen it, there's some highly sought after positions. But then there are many other boards that sometimes the challenge that your office can have is contacting people and saying, do you know someone who would
That's
serve?
exactly
Because
right.
there's some that are not that high profile.
That's right.
And people don't think to apply. And so that's really it's really key if someone's willing to do some public service, and that's what it is. It's not something where they're going to get salary for being on a board or get big compensation, but public service.
It's all public service. And here's the thing: I take all comers. We take it over the phone, via email, people recommending it, but also going to website, which we try to direct people to. But a lot of what we do in the Secretary of Commonwealth's office is also recruit individuals. And so I will, along with people from my team, get out on the road and attend Rotary clubs and sorority and fraternity meetings and alumni association meetings from different institutions, just to promote the fact that, yes, you may be interested in a board, but did you know that we have all these other boards and commissions that might be of interest to you as well? And we're making a big push to getting more young people involved in the process as well. Those folks from the ages of 18 to 35, that's the future of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And it'd be great if we can find more people with the hair maybe a little bit less gray to maybe get involved in the process. That's always been a tough part for a lot of my predecessors out here.
Well, that's a great challenge to undertake, to do that. And we hope that those in that age range who are seeing this program, or if they're parents of someone of that age who are seeing it, they will encourage their child or grandchild or whatever age to take a look.
Yeah, and I've actually visited a couple universities, actually, and you will be surprised by how many folks who are within their major at the moment and say, well, could I be on a board or commission? And the answer to that is yes. Even you can be on a board or commission here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Now, I'm trying to recall, would they have to be a citizen of Virginia? I think maybe some boards you have to be.
Some boards is true, but there are some boards that call for out-of-state members as well. People, for instance, at boards of visitors, let's say take UVA for example, who have a connection to the university or could just be helpful to the university. The code allows for out-of-state members. I know Gunston Hall is another one. The Gunston Hall Board of Regents, they also have out-of-state members too. So it's all about what the code says, basically. And there are citizen members for some boards. Some boards have in the code stipulate what type of expertise is necessary. So we follow those guidelines. We try to follow those guidelines to the T to make sure that we have the perfect setup for whatever agency that relates with that particular board.
I think this will be accurate. If not, you'll correct me. that practically every profession that's regulated by a board has citizen members.
Just about.
And whether it's one citizen member, two citizen members, and if they go on that website of yours, and if they're looking through A through, I don't believe there's one in Z, but if they go down the alphabet and click on one and check it, it'll indicate whether they're professional members or whether they're citizen member vacancies.
Right. That's exactly right. And we have a little bit more ease in finding the professional members sometimes because we are helped by associations and the particular trade associations and advocacy groups, but we have a harder time sometimes finding just those individuals who may have an interest in a particular board, just regular everyday citizens who can probably serve.
Well, I wish you well on that, and we hope we can do all we can through the program and through publicizing it to make sure you get some of those younger ones too. Get them involved.
I appreciate it, David. It's a task and a half, but maybe we could even use your talent somewhere.
Well, we were talking before the show. I have an interesting story that I won't take your time to tell the viewers about how my first board appointee as a citizen member, but had an opportunity to serve, and it's great to be able to do that and to serve in some way.
Good.
It is. One of the other things that particularly folks around Capitol Square know, but I'm not sure that all of our viewers know, is that your office oversees the official use of the seal.
That's right.
You're the keeper of the seal of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yeah, keeper of the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Virginia and its lesser seals. And,
yes.
Maybe once or twice a week we get agencies, state agencies, or even some private companies reaching out and see whether or not they can actually use the seal in some form or manner. There's a criteria that we use to decide whether or not it's appropriate for the use of the seal. But it's pretty funny here. On my birthday, some of my colleagues, since it's played up that I'm the keeper of the seal of the Commonwealth of Virginia and its lesser seals, brought me 2 stuffed seals and said, like, maybe just to knock me
Yes,
down a notch or
yes,
whatever.
yes.
So I keep that in my office every day with not only the actual seals but also those little
Right.
stuffed seals as well.
Right. And again, the website for the Secretary of the Commonwealth is very helpful about the seals
That's right.
because it gives some information there about even the possible use in a commercial setting, and it has some criteria
exactly right.
where someone can request that
That's right.
and can get that information.
And our office is willing to answer any calls, any questions that any person may have about the seal, and they'd like to call there and find some of the answers. They can also reach out to us via phone.
Am I doing some research on the Office of Secretary of the Commonwealth? If I had ever known it, I had forgotten that prior to the 1971 Constitution of Virginia, the Secretary of the Commonwealth was elected for a period in our history.
That's right.
Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Secretary of the Commonwealth.
That's right.
Elected statewide. So it was interesting to think that only in modern history, if you call it modern, since the 1970s, that the Secretary of the Commonwealth has been an appointed position by the governor.
That's right. And many of my counterparts in other states are elected officials, and so when I go to one of the conferences and they find out that I'm an appointed person, and also that I don't handle elections, it makes me a little bit more unique compared to other states because appointed and also elections aren't my responsibility.
Yes, and if folks are drawing the parallel between states that are not commonwealths, it's usually the Secretary of State.
That's exactly
Secretary
right.
of State from not the U.S. but from the state of whatever.
Florida or anywhere, they have Secretary of States there, and I think Maryland has Secretary of State as well. And I ran into a young lady who's the Secretary of the Commonwealth, or she's actually Secretary of State in Kentucky, but Kentucky in a Commonwealth. I told her, well, I guess could be only one Commonwealth. That would be us.
Right. Yes. Yes. And so elections in Virginia are really.
That's administered in the Secretary of Administration's side of things. So
Yes.
that's her. That's Nancy Rodriguez's responsibility.
Yes, and I believe also your cabinet position may be unique among the others in that when the next governor is elected, begins serving, your term goes 1 week
That's
into the time of
exactly
that
right.
next governor to provide the kind of transition that sometimes is needed.
Yeah, I started working the same day as all my other fellow cabinet secretaries started working, but I wasn't officially on the payroll until the week afterwards. Me and my good friend Janet Kelly, the former Secretary of the Commonwealth, shared the office for 1 full week. She ran me through the process of the office, and we had meetings, and she introduced me to a lot of folks. And I think that's the right process for a particular office that handles so many records for the state government. And so it works. It's kind of quirky, but it works.
So you will be the longest serving
That's
member of Governor McAuliffe's cabinet because the other's term will end as the next governor's inaugurated.
That's
and yours
exactly right.
Goes on for another week.
That's right.
As you would then help transition.
That's right.
next-
That's right.
the next
It's
person.
it's another cool thing is everywhere you see the governor's signature, usually you see mine to attest to everything he's done. So it's a cool job. I can't lie about that.
Go back to some of the other duties that you mentioned because there's been a change made in the time that Governor McAuliffe's first 100 years, and that's in the restoration of rights or the area where they're nonviolent felons or something.
That's right.
Explain to us about what the change has been, the executive order.
Well, when the governor campaigned, he campaigned for years on restoration of voting rights, and we had a 90-day evaluation of what we wanted to do and how we can tweak what Governor McDonald had done. And I'll say Governor McDonald, I think, granted about 8,000 rights back to individuals, and that's a lot. He had the most ever during his tenure as governor. We took a look at the current criteria that the McDonald administration left and just made a few changes. Number one, we are going to add a list to our website of all the offenses that will require a waiting period. Mostly those are violent offenses. Secondly, we removed drug offenses from the violent list.
That's the part.
That's
yes.
right. We remove drug offenses from the violent list. So when we decide whether or not to grant someone's rights back, we will now decide with drug offenses being recognized as a non-violent offense. And for those folks who will apply for their civil rights back, who find themselves with one of those offenses on the violent list, we've reduced the time they have to wait to actually petition the governor from 5 years to 3 years. That's pretty significant, and there were a lot of praise for the governor for what he's done. And at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. We want to get more and more people back into that process, to the civic process, and in participating, they'll get the right to vote back, the right to run for office, the right to be a notary public, and there's another right I can't remember at the moment. But one thing they cannot get the right back is the right to bear arms.
Mm-hmm. Now, one other duty that I see on the list of duties is something about authenticating foreign adoptions.
That's correct. Yes.
That's I guess another document that has to be authenticated or verified or something.
Yep, by the Secretary of Commonwealth's office. And during the whole Crimea incident, I had a couple of folks who had relatives and family in Crimea who needed documents authenticated or whatnot. And our office was definitely receiving a lot of incoming phone calls when that whole crisis happened. And so usually what I've been told, and when there's a crisis overseas or something of the sort, our office will be abuzz with a lot of phone calls for that. A very, very, very important function that sometimes goes overlooked.
And I guess back during the winter time, we're enjoying spring and soon summer now, but when there were states of emergency in Virginia, there was probably, again, something else. Your signature following the governor's signature.
That's right. Anytime there's an executive order that the governor actually puts forward, my signature is right there with the governor's, making sure all the functions of government are operating, basically.
Yes. Well, in our closing couple of minutes that we have, I probably haven't asked you some question that you thought, David will certainly ask me this, and something else that you could help tell our viewers about your involvement with the governor and his administration, about the cabinet.
Well, as you know, Governor McAuliffe is he has a lot of energy, and he's a very, very challenging. He would like to challenge every person on his team. We actually had a cabinet meeting today, and the governor, as he says at every other cabinet meeting, is that he wants us to push the envelope and think outside the box. I see this is the box. Governor McAuliffe wants to think outside the box and see if we can actually push the envelope to move the Commonwealth forward. And sometimes we may fail in that process, but at the end of the day, we're going to come up with an idea or two, I think, that's going to move the Commonwealth in the right direction. And I tell you, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure working for a governor who has the foresight and the vision he does for creating a Commonwealth that's going to be strong enough to compete with anyone over the next 25 to 50 years.
Well, he has a reputation of not sleeping much. So is that a criteria? Well, you have been with him for years.
For years, I've known the governor for years. He's a man who believes sleep when you're dead.
Right.
And so he operates on a time schedule which I'll admit I cannot keep up with. And my wife tells me I should not even try to. But he is a special guy. And there'll only be likely only one Terry McAuliffe ever created.
Yes. Well, he certainly, with all that high energy, it's got to spill over into the cabinet as well.
Without a doubt. I mean, his energy motivates us to. I mean, after he gave his 100-day speech the other day, I swear he had a lot of agency heads and cabinet members who were willing to basically run through walls for him. And that's the type of guy you want to work for, I think.
Now, we haven't talked about it in our last minute. We talked about it with Secretary Hazel, but the big challenge yet ahead is getting a budget onto the governor.
That's correct. And the governor is working hard on trying to close the coverage gap. 400,000 individuals could receive coverage if we were to expand the Medicaid program here and help close the coverage gap. And I think we're going to do that. We're going to get a budget, and we're also going to close the coverage gap at the same time as well. I'm very, very optimistic about it, and I think that both sides working together can get this thing done.
Secretary Levar Stoney, thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond. We look forward to our next conversation.
I appreciate it, David. Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.